possibilities. And to manipulate possibilities is to manipulate power. Welcome to the show. Yes, we got a great show for you today. Cleveland, it's a little dreary right now. A little dreary right now. I don't know if the clouds gonna break up a little bit later on, but we will see. We will see what happens. Stick around, like I say in Cleveland. It'll change up on you in a matter of hours. The whole planet is going through something real interesting. I was talking to a sister last night. She said she heard that they said the planet is sick. So if the planet is sick, that it means it's breeding and putting off a vibration of sickness to everybody. Maybe that can account for some of the craziness that's going on across the planet. But hey, what can we say? We got a great show for you today. But in the remote studio, we got our good brother Vince. What's going on?
Well, my brother, we got an action-packed afternoon at Larchmere Arts today. Yvette Matone Quarles is going to be doing an art show in that space, so you can show up around 4 o'clock. It's absolutely free, and we will welcome you to our space. So that's what's happening at Larchmere Arts. But in the meantime, we have a great show and a great guest for you. He is no stranger to 360 Info Network. You may recognize his face. He is a clinical psychologist who specializes in our young folk, and he can tell you all about that. But at his core, he is the essential Pan-Africanist on the planet. We'd like to welcome to 360 Info Network, Dr. Umar Johnson. Brother Dr. Umar, how are you today?
All is well, Baba. Glad to be with you two brothers. Good morning to the city of Cleveland and the state of Ohio. It's been a while since I've been in Ohio, but I'm sure I'll be coming back soon. Black Power.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. That's a definitely my good brother. It's, a person can easily pick you up on the YouTube these days, my brother. You, you are putting out there some information and some things, boy, to get people's consciousness revived or get them some controversy or whatever, brother. But you getting them to something to think about. That's how I look at it. Giving them another perspective of thinking some stuff, and that's something that you always brought to the table, my brother. But with me, and I don't know if my good people, listeners out there, is tired of me bringing it, but I always got to go back to the motherland, man, because I really think that's our future as Black people. My perspective, and I know, and I've seen, some of the recent YouTube videos. I've seen you in the motherland, on different panels, talking to different people, this, that, and other. So I think it's always great for people who might be on the borderline or wondering what's going on in Africa. Should they even maybe invest in Africa? Should they live in Africa? And so they want to know kind of like what's the flavor. Because from my perspective, I see some consciousness levels rising and them understanding what their value is and knowing that they need to take control of some of their resources. So that kind of talk and visas and citizenship and all that kind of stuff is going on. So from your perspective, having boots on the ground, can you give us a little layout on what's going on the motherland?
I would say in Africa, and I just came back from South Africa as well as the Republic of Ethiopia. I was actually a guest of their Institute of Foreign Affairs, the keynote speaker for the African Liberation Day this past May. 5 biggest issues right now. Number one is the Chinese invasion. Most countries in Africa are very afraid of the incursion of the Chinese, although they are allowing it and accepting it out of a need or presumed need for the funding. They're still nonetheless concerned about the aggression of the Chinese, their land grab and their resource grab, as well as their ignoring of local customs and governmental rules. Chinese are drilling without permission. They are fishing without permission. They are stealing resources without authority. And so it's just a big mess. So the Chinese is one big issue. The second issue is how to bring diasporan Africans, those of us outside of the continent, into a meaningful role as it relates to the regeneration of the African continent. Although Africa wants its children from outside the continent to come and play a role in its redevelopment, Africa doesn't necessarily know how to do that. we have to come to the table and put forth some serious effort as it relates to creating systems and protocol so that can be effectively done. We know Ghana has dual citizenship. Some of the other countries do not yet have it, although they are conversating about it. I think one of the concerns there is whether the American African is coming with genuine intentions, or will we simply be neo-colonizers in blackface? The third issue in Africa, which is also an issue throughout the diaspora because it's a problem in America, it's a problem in the Caribbean. And of course, I just came back from Bonaire, Curacao, Aruba, Guadeloupe, Barbados, St. Thomas, and I have St. Croix coming up soon. But one of the big issues from Africa to the Caribbean to America is youth unemployment. In South Africa, where I was at the end of May, the youth unemployment rate is about 40%. And as a result of that, the violence in South Africa amongst the youth is a major problem. The violence in St. Thomas, in Barbados, in Aruba, in Curacao, all these places I've been, youth unemployment is a major contributor to the black on black crime, as it is in places like my home city of Philadelphia and your city of Cleveland. So we have to do something about the youth unemployment that is gripping the diaspora. The next issue would be education for our children. That is a very big issue across the board. Schools in the Caribbean, schools in Africa, schools in America are not necessarily keeping pace with the changing times and the demands of society and technology. And of course, as you know, because I'm joining you brothers right now from South Florida, Miami Gardens, where I'll be speaking this afternoon at 4, and everybody's up in arms here with the
Yeah.
pronouncements and decisions made by Governor Ron DeSantis, where he has forbade the teaching of African history, critical race theory, but other states have done that. But DeSantis is unique in that he has created, or his team has created, a new Black history mandate where slavery will be taught as if it were beneficial to African people, that it gave us skills that benefited us. I guess he overlooked the rape. He overlooked the theft. He overlooked the dehumanization. He overlooked the castrations. He overlooked the fact that many enslaved Africans who came to America already had the skills that the plantations needed. That's one of the reasons why they brought us over here. We already knew how to grow cotton. Cotton wasn't foreign to African. We've been wearing cotton clothes for millennia. We already knew about tobacco and things like that. In fact, we brought many crops and grains and skills with us. So American slavery didn't teach the Black man anything. We taught the American slavers how to do what it was they were doing with regard to the raising of crops.
Yes, that's true, and that's got everybody in arms right at this particular time in reference to before we switch to intercontinental situations that's going on, like what you said with this and this. I just with our African brothers, you got brother Julius down there in South Africa doing his thing, and I don't know if he may be taking a stab for presidency. I'm not sure on that, but you got PLO, and you got our sister Ariana Chicago. You know what I'm talking about. What's the
Yes,
sister's name? Yeah,
Americana Chiambo.
Chianpo. Yeah, that's a mouthful right there. Yeah, so you got our sister out there too, reaching out and going across the continent, trying to wake up our dear brothers there. Um, Something that Dr. Whitaker, one of our good buddies here and uh, regular on this show, talks about the leadership, and it's good to see some of the old heads as far as leadership over there starting to wake up and actually do some pushback as far as America is concerned. It was a young British guy on a TED Talk show that I've seen recently on YouTube talking about this possible alliance in the Mediterranean with India and with China and stuff, far as resources and goods, and bringing Africa to a superpower status. And if, once you think about it, that 1.4 million that you got in India, China, and Africa, that's half, damn near half the world seem like that they would, and I think that maybe can contribute to some of that pushback that they give in America that you can't tell us what to do. If that's not our culture, the LGBT piece, So it's good on one hand. I see the leaders doing it, but I think we're gonna have a rise of young leaders as well coming up behind them that is more conscientious about what's going on. Your thoughts?
That's definitely true. Africa is home to some of the youngest people in the world. I believe I read a statistic that said 50% of all Africans on the continent are under the age of 30. So without question, I think the global white power structure is looking at the threat that that could pose if they do not politically and psychologically neutralize the
Hmm.
youth on the African continent. But with that being said, China and India are not friends to African people. We can just look at what China and India are doing inside of Africa, and their treatment of African people socially is extremely racist. You're absolutely correct. That's nearly half of the world between the continent and the two countries. But at the same time, we have to be very clever in our dealings with China and India, because as two of the most populated countries in the world, they are definitely thirsty for the neo-colonization of Africa.
Yes,
Righty.
yes.
So we're talking about China, we're talking about India, and we have this thing called the BRICS. It is an
Mhm.
alliance of countries that are seeking to de-dollarize, and there's a lot of momentum. They're going to have a summit in South Africa next month. I want to get your thoughts on BRICS and de-dollarization and its impact on the continent of Africa when we return. You're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490.
Uh-oh.
Dr. Umar Johnson, and
Oh,
he is going to bring us up to date on things having to do with Africa, as well as talk about some things that are going on domestically as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
right. Yeah, my brother. You doing? Well, I turn on the YouTube. I see you out there, brother.
Uh, uh,
I said, my boys out there, boy. That's good though. You keeping it hot, brother. You
yes,
keeping
sir.
it
Yes, sir.
hot.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, real quick. I seen one piece where they did that. One of the presidents or somewhere was inhibiting you to make a move somewhere within the continent somewhere or something.
It was
You're on the
difficult
air,
for me to
folks,
get
just so
from
you
South
know.
Africa to Ethiopia because the white manager of Ethiopian Airlines at the Johannesburg airport didn't want to grant me passage. He said that the government did not send him the visa that he needed to let me onto the plane, even though the government invited me and the government owns the airline. That white man decided not to let me go. So I'm not sure why they
All
had a
right.
European.
We're back.
Yes, sir.
360 Info Network on AM 1490. Our guest is noted Pan Africanist and child psychologist, Dr. Umar Johnson. Before we took the break, we were talking about China and India, and then you got a whole bunch of other countries such as South Africa, Russia, and I think there are probably around 40 other countries that are interested in joining this alliance. One of the things that they're seeking to do is end the U.S. dollar's reign as the world reserve trading currency. So there are going to be deep implications about this around the world and here in America, where we are also being affected by the rampant inflation and changes in the financial system. Dr. Umar, they're moving towards a central bank digital currency. As you know, they implemented a central bank digital currency in Nigeria, and it's really been a problem for the Nigerians. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about the BRICS, their efforts to de-dollarize, to change the economies of the world, to have one central currency around the world, and basically prevent Africans and others from amassing wealth, from amassing resources, amassing the things that are necessary to take control of our lives. What are your thoughts?
Well, I got three thoughts when it comes to BRICS. Number one, none of the leading countries in the BRICS association, not Russia, not China, not India, not Brazil, although Brazil is predominantly African, the leadership is Caucasian Portuguese. They're not any more interested in a free Africa or an economically empowered Africa than the French, the Brits or the Americans. So, although I do think the weakening of America's economic domination around the world is a good thing, at the end of the day, what exactly will be Africa's benefit being a member of BRICS? Because those countries are just as in pursuit of the domination and exploitation of African minerals as are the other European countries who are currently neo-colonizers. At the end of the day, my next question would also be, okay, does this mean Africa will no longer have her currency printed by European governments? Even if you're a member of BRICS, if your money, your currency is still being printed by America, printed by France, printed by Belgium, printed by the United Kingdom, what good is that? Most African reserves are in European banks. So at the end of the day, you still need a Central African bank. And I'm not sure that's something that the BRICS countries are interested in, because that would weaken their influence over Africa. So for me, I have a lot more questions than answers about this BRICS thing. I think Africa has suffered far too long under the ideology that my enemy's enemy is my friend. Africa has no friends.
Yeah, that's what a lot of our scholars, like Dr. Henry Clark was talking at, a long time ago, and that was just one of his main points is saying that, black folks have no friends. So we talking about self-reliance and setting up a system that works for us. Because me personally, some stuff I've been spewing out lately is basically saying that we gonna have to have another approach. We can't use the same approach that that's got us here, this capitalist system that got us here to try to fix our issues. So in saying that, Doc, you know, is there room? Is there a place for the diaspora in Africa? Yeah, I know we talking. This. We need to get a kumbaya moment and come together, and I think education is still needed on both sides for us to iron out some of the issues of black folks over here who is conscionable, that may want to link up and do some business in Africa, but at the same time, they need to know their history and know exactly who they're dealing with. So, is there room? Is there a place for the diaspora there?
I believe it is, but I think that when the history of the 21st century is written about the African race, I think that one of the greatest criticisms of this century will be that neither African leadership nor Africans in the diaspora did as much as they could to build that Pan African solidarity movement that Africans could benefit from no matter what side of the Atlantic Ocean that they are on. I think we are
Mhm.
missing a great opportunity. Africa is missing a great opportunity, and Africans in the diaspora are missing a great opportunity by not pushing the Pan African repatriation, whether that's economic repatriation or physical repatriation. We are not pushing that agenda hard enough. The way in which the Chinese and the East Indians and the Arabs and the Jews and the Anglo Saxons are gobbling up Africa, you would think African leaders would be a lot more progressive with letting us in. I do have to honor the president of Ghana, because with the 400 years 2019 year return celebration, I do think that that was more than just culture and history. I think he saw that as an opportunity to give Africans in the diaspora the right to come back home, to resettle, to invest in Ghana, because the Chinese are making just as much inroads in Ghana as they are in other places. I know one of the slave dungeons, I think it's Cape Coast Castle Dungeon, the Chinese pretty much have control of the fishing industry right around that
Mhm.
dungeon. It's no longer controlled by the local Africans there. So I like what he did, but he's only one country. These other countries are slow to move. And I think one of the reasons they are slow to move is because the Chinese and European investors don't want Africans from the diaspora there, because the more we come home, the less they are needed. And if their input isn't as great, then their ability to exploit will not be as great either. But again, I think we're missing a great opportunity right now.
You're absolutely correct about that. That's something that I try to charge and champion all the time. Just getting us to look, even if you're not talking about moving there. Look at the investment point of, that one British guy that I was telling you about. He talked about the economic growth on the continent is leading the planet. And so if you call yourself an investor, the thing is always getting in early and
Hmm.
getting in the investment early. So, you see Netflix and all these folks, they're building the big movie studio over there, airports, transportation, all those things is going. And guess what? You need materials to build those things. You can look at getting in as far as the stocks is concerned. You got to have materials to build those raw materials, and those are things like that we tend not to even look at and let other folks align themselves up to get in those positions, and we just on the consumer end as well. So I've been trying to get us to look at that and look at those trends, because everybody ain't over there for nothing. You agree?
Oh, absolutely. Nobody is in Africa except to take. I say it all the time. Anyone in Africa, and this is just, a rephrasing of what the great grandmaster teacher, Pan Africanist Dr. John Henry Clark said. Anyone in Africa who is not an African is an invader. And this is a very important point, my brothers, because Africa, just like Black America, suffers from multiculturalism syndrome. In Africa, they have went out of their way they have went out of their way to make non-Africans feel like they are Africans. That is a mistake. Just like in the Black community, we have made non-Africans feel like they are part of our community. Nobody else does that. No one is an owner of Israel except Jews. No one is an owner of China except China. No one is an owner of India except Indians. But when you come to Africa, it belongs to everybody. Everybody is made to feel like they are an African. And that is a big mistake. We just had a situation that happened with my Philadelphia brother, Kevin Hart, in Egypt, where they canceled Kevin Hart's concert because he went on the record to say that the ancient Egyptians were Black. We all know that. The world knows that. This has already been proven. UNESCO, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima proved it. Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Chancellor Williams. This is no longer a debate. We know the Egyptians were an African civilization. But guess what? The modern Arabs who came into Egypt in the 7th century after the death of Muhammad ibn Abdullah, the prophet of Islam, and through the sword and religion, dominated our African ancestors and took possession of the northern coast of the African continent. They canceled Kevin Hart for stating an obvious. So people have gotten real comfortable being in Africa and not being an African, and getting upset when people remind them that if you
Hmm.
are in Africa and you are not Black, you are either a colonizer or an invader, nothing else.
Yeah, you got your brother. What is a Warehouse that's going around in America here, uh, talking about that. It's I'm tying this to the whole thing globally. You got Arabs upset. Somebody said some of the Mayan descendants, when black folks was claiming some of their ancestry, over there in South America, you know, they were uh, becoming upset about black folks claiming their heritage. So you had this push going on. You got stuff going on here in America. They don't want to teach us the history, and so I almost kind of equated. Is this like the Custer's last stance, because they know this thing is changing on them, and everybody are lining up to they're trying to keep the brother down and from knowing the truth. If that's what's going on.
Oh, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. Our history is the greatest of any people on earth. No one can even begin to compete with it. Not the Chinese, not the Indians. And of course, we civilized both of those countries. So a lot of people are insecure about the African contribution to human civilization. But that insecurity is not just historical. That insecurity speaks to our potential in the here and now. And it also speaks to our potential going forward. We are capable of doing anything and achieving anything if we put our minds to it. But the great kryptonite of African people, the great deceiver of the African race, is this issue of organizational unity. We are the weakest race in the world when it comes to organizational unity. We're the greatest when it comes to history. We're the greatest when it comes to spirituality. We're the greatest when it comes to inventions. But when it comes to organizational unity and international solidarity, we are the weakest. And until we address that curse that we have put upon ourselves, none of our other assets, gifts, and talents will be able to be put to effective use for our liberation.
Doc, what you just touched on is right in your field of study. So now we're talking psychological issue here. You it's almost like you got a 300-pound giant, but he don't have the consciousness, the understanding, the power and the strength that he got. So, and that's the problem I have sometimes when people, I sit on panels with people and we talk about where we at and where the state of black folks and things like that. But I have to resort right back to the common denominator there, the common factor there. Until you change the mindset of the individual, you know, uh, we going to continue to evolve this into this whole situation. Something that Dr. Amos Wilson said, if we don't teach our children to fix our current issues, as far as the educational system, again, you on that hamster wheel doing nothing. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Education and economics. And my biggest fear right now, uh, Baba Lynn, is if we don't get a hold of these youth soon, we will almost be beyond a point of no return because we have allowed circumstance, poverty, unemployment, miseducation to crystallize into a culture that the youth are proud of. When I'm looking at these elderly women who are being robbed by our sons at the ATMs, when I'm looking at these women who are being carjacked coming out of the supermarket, when I look at these young children who are being caught in the drive-bys, we have allowed the ingredients of oppression to crystallize itself into a culture that the youth are proud of. We got to get them babies back because if we don't, we will soon have to fight a civil war against our youth before we fight a civil war against European domination.
Last question, Don. See, what you touched on something that I've been wanting to work on. So, and I mean, the people with money, our black folks with money, and I don't understand why they don't see it because it's just quite obvious to me. Uh, Now we're talking imagery. To get into that mindset, we talk about imagery, producing things that would motivate and inspire people to do something, to do right, or at least to be sheeple and follow a group of people that who are putting this positive imagery that is necessary because that's what's there. The social media, the TV, the music, and things of that nature. So again, we have to take control of those things. What's
We
the problem there,
absolutely do.
Doc?
The problem there, my good brother, is a core issue with us, and that is the unwillingness to accept responsibility and accountability for solving our own problems, my brother. This is at the heart of the black predicament in America. We will march, we will pray, we will protest, we will complain, we will do podcasts, we will write books, we will hold events, we will do seminars, we will take trips to Africa, but we will not weaponize our black dollars to build institutional black power. I have to say it again. We have yet to systemically and collectively weaponize our black dollars so we can build institutional power. Where is the building of the banks? Where is the building of the hospitals? Where is the building of the schools? Where is the building of the supermarkets? Where is the building of the manufacturing sector to provide our people with their basic everyday needs? Where is the building of the distribution network to distribute the goods that our people need around the country and around the world? Those are the five essential institutions of any people, and we are not building them, Baba. Beauty salons and restaurants, we got a million of them. We don't need another restaurant. We don't need another beauty salon. We need critical institutions. And to that point, I'm disappointed in our millionaire and billionaire class because they're not building critical institutions. We have
Mm-hmm.
LeBron, we have Rihanna, we have Puffy, we have Kanye, we have Tyler Perry, we got Oprah Winfrey, we got Bob Johnson, we got all these black billionaires, and they're not thinking about institutions any more than we are.
Well,
Right.
we
Go ahead,
we
brother.
we have LeBron James here in Northeast Ohio, and he has built this school and all of the things that he's done. But I guess the question that I have is, When are we going to stop running into a burning house? Our solution is to do everything that we can to be like those who are oppressing us, and then we embrace this educational system that has never really served our needs. The fact of the matter is, when we take our destiny into our own hands and we build our own institutions, and we can center our education around our history, our culture, the need to have land, the need to be connected to our languages that empower us by enabling us to understand who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. It's really kind of frustrating to look around and see how we keep going for the banana in the tailpipe. We get this situation where we think, well, if we go to their school and we get a job and we basically become a slave to debt, we have arrived. And then we have our brothers and sisters on the continent of Africa. All they want to do is come over here and face the same things that they're facing on the continent of Africa, but in a different way. Those Europeans came into those countries, they took the raw materials out of the countries, brought them back to their own countries, set up their manufacturing plants, and profit from the things that come from the continent of Africa. Dr. Umar, I have to ask you this question because it's just kind of burning a hole in me. When is it that African leadership will stand up and say, no more? No longer are we going to be taken advantage of by you. No longer are we going to send our good stuff to you and let you profit from it. Why is it that they won't stand up and say, okay, no more coltan? You can't make another cell phone. You can't make another laptop. You can't make anything else with what we have until we get what we need and what we deserve for what we have. What is this crisis of leadership that African leaders can't stand up and do what's right for the people of their country and really for Africans all around the world?
Personal agenda and political fear. Personal agenda and political fear. I think one thing we have to admit, and I think this is true of global leadership, regardless of race, but of course, we're focusing on ourselves. Most people ascend to leadership to fulfill a personal agenda that has nothing to do with the people, whether that's religious leadership, whether it's secular leadership, whether it's political leadership. African leaders are no different. Many of them did not come to office to revolutionize their economy or revolutionize their society. African leaders get elected so they can prepare for their life after leadership. Their office, their administration is an investment in their personal economic future. I've seen it. I've studied it. I get messages from Africans from nearly every country on a monthly basis, letting me know what's going on over there. And it is pathetic. They are not for the people. And the way that they're able to continue is, number one, European capitalism has convinced Africans all over the diaspora, including us in America, that voting is the best thing you can do to change your reality. So they have all of us hypnotized with democracy. European democracy has African people globally hypnotized. That's number one. We will not think outside of voting as if voting is the only way to change things. If voting could change anything, voting would be illegal. So that's number one. Hypnotized with the vote. Number two, tribal imperialism. In Africa, just like in the diaspora, many Africans are still more concerned with their tribe being in charge than with Black people being free. I got to say it again. Throughout Africa, many of our brothers and sisters are more interested in their tribe being in charge than in Africa being free of European domination. They would much rather let white people continue to exploit the resources as long as their tribe is going to be the conduit for that exploitation than they are about freedom. In other words, if I'm Igbo, I'm not voting for a Yoruba, even if I know he's the best thing for this country. You understand? If I'm Zulu, I might not vote for a Kosai, even if I know she's the best one for this country. If I'm in Kenya and I belong to the Maasai Kingdom, I may never vote for a Kikuyu in my life because he is not of my culture. So until we get over that, and it's interesting you bring this up because Chancellor Williams May God be pleased with him. Chancellor Williams, in his book, Destruction of African Civilization, in the opening pages, he talks about tribalism in Africa laying the foundation for Europeans to come in and enslave us and ultimately colonize us. It was that tribal conflict and confrontation that made it
Yes,
so easy for Europeans to get in then and for Europeans to stay in control now.
that's true. That's true. That's
So,
true.
who do you think is getting it right? I watched a video just recently of the president of Uganda, and he was confronted by a Western reporter about President Obama's disappointment with with Uganda over its position in recent legislation about LGBTQ
Hmm.
agenda. And the president basically responded by saying, "Well, you know, we're disappointed in you. We don't come to your country and tell you how to live. So what gives you the right to tell us how to live?" And he used a term that I hadn't heard before, but I got it when he said it. He was talking about social imperialism, the way the United States has bullied folks around the world. That's what they've done with the US dollar. They use it as a weapon, and countries are tired of being in a position where they will face sanctions if they do something that's against the interest or the philosophy of the United States. So, who do you think, in terms of leadership on the continent, is actually getting it right?
I did have a chance to meet with Brother Julius Malema when I was in South Africa. It was a brief meet and greet more than anything else. And I do have some confidence in him. I do think he cares about the people and will do some good if he's given a chance to be president. However, I do have to exercise a little bit of caution because he does support the LGBTQ agenda. He himself is not a member of that culture, but he does support it. He does not see a problem with LGBTQ being advanced into South Africa. And I asked him specifically about the children. What about the children? If you support this, they're not going to stop with the adults. They want this in the South African schools. And he never really, addressed that. He just said, we don't support hatred towards anybody. And I wanted him to get off of the hatred conversation because that's not my point. I'm not about hating anyone either, but I am about stopping any agenda that is against the long-term best interests of African people. But he made it clear he supports it. So, my confidence in him is not totally shaken, but I do have some reservations now because I don't understand why a Pan-Africanist leader would be supporting LGBTQ on the African continent. So like I said, with a lot of our African brothers and sisters, it's about personal agenda and it's about access to power. I'm not saying that's necessarily true for Brother Julius, but I'm a little hesitant across the board when I look at African leadership. There always seems to be some sort of nuance, some sort of trump card, some sort of issue that keeps me from 100% supporting any of them.
Yeah, that's the issue, and that's why I said, the comment I made earlier about uh, we're gonna have to use a different approach. Our good brother Wayne B. Chandler wrote the book Ancient Future, and I think that's says a lot about what black folks I think we're gonna have to do is get back to some of those foundational pieces and of understanding, and in order for us to move forward, I think because our ancestors have laid down the track record on, and also the foundation of who, knowing what a community is, what is necessary. And I think if we still engulf ourselves into to this consumer capitalist type of approach, that I don't think it's going to work for us. So I think going back and us finding ourselves and refining what was laid back, it's going to be the blueprint, I think, and helping us get through these trying times, I think. Because with that, people would, understand. And I don't know how long we got to get our butt kicked for us to understand that the whole divide and conquer piece, that they would eventually let go of this whole tribal issue and just,
Yeah,
move forward.
it's tough. Black people have all the compassion in the world for others, but almost no compassion for themselves. It's one of our great spiritual contradictions. We have all this patience for white people. I mean, you have black people who have even forgiven Europeans for slavery, but they
Yes.
won't forgive their brother for a minor slight. So we need a psychological makeover. We really, really do. And that's why, for me, with the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, and just, I'm really hoping to make some inroads into transforming the collective consciousness of our people through our children, and more importantly, through our boys. And just to give you guys an update on that, we have a little bit more HVAC repairs to do, gentlemen. We already have our HVAC unit brand new, $50,000. We have heat, we have air, we have controls. The only thing that needs to be done right now, we have to change out the wall unit in the computer room, change out the wall unit in the data room, and then in about half the classrooms, we are missing air distributor caps and air recycler caps. Really, it's a 1, 2, 3 day job, to be honest with you. But the company we're working with, they have a lot of clientele, so they can't get with us as quickly as we want them to, but by the end of August is my hope, by the end of this month, and I'm going to be very upset if we're not done, but we should be completely done, all major renovations by the end of this month. The only thing would be left would be superficial changes, superficial repairs, such as painting the walls, covering up any holes we may have from the plumbing and electric repairs, and getting the floor ready, buffing the floor up, shining the floor up. It's beautification after this point. And if all goes well, we're looking to have a grand opening for the community, not for the children, but for the community. We're not going to start educating until next summer, but for the community, we're looking at a Kwanzaa celebration, possibly week long. We have to wait and see if we're going to do it every day, every other day, all 7 days. But we're planning on a grand opening in Kwanzaa. So I want all my Cleveland family to come on down. I want YouTube brothers to come on down. And I thank you so much for helping me spread the word on FDMG. But with Ohio only being a few hours from Pennsylvania, we need all of our Ohio donors and supporters to come on down and join with us in this historic celebration of finally opening the doors of the first school in American history built exclusively by the African diaspora.
Okay. Well, Dr. Johnson, you mentioned the necessity for a psychological makeover. And when I look at the landscape of Black men and Black women here in the diaspora, and perhaps on the continent as well, other parts of the world, I see kind of a competition between Black men and women. And it's been well established that as a result of the welfare system, you saw kind of a disintegration of the Black family. What can we do to bring about more cohesion between Black men and Black women and get them to perhaps have a greater understanding of our culture and the relationships that we have with each other as a result of understanding our culture? Because I see it, and I'm sure Brother Hamtonio will agree with this. One of the greatest deficits that we have in our community is a lack of awareness of who we are through our culture and how we should relate to each other as a result of this self-awareness.
Brothers, there are two movements taking place right now that I believe in 25 years' time, we may come to learn that those movements in some way, shape, form, or fashion was funded by the power structure. One of them is the I'm Not From Africa movement, which is gaining traction. This so-called pretendian agenda where everybody wants to be a Native American with no connection to Africa at all. And I find it interesting that movement grew up right around the 2019 year of return. I don't think
Yes.
that was a coincidence. And the other movement, to your point, Baba Vince, has to do with Black men and Black women being confrontational and condemnatory towards each other. Now, don't get me wrong. As you all know, we've had a little bit of that back and forth going on ever since the economic devastation of the Black man began in the 1970s. We've always had some of that male-female conflict as soon as Black men were no longer able to be the breadwinners of the family. But the pathological manner in which Black men and Black women are attacking each other, if you go on YouTube right now, The most popular videos, literally the most popular videos on YouTube for black people are the ones where the women are condemning the men and the men are condemning the women. It's must see TV. Black male female romantic conflict is must see TV. Is this a coincidence given the fact that this is happening this intensely at a time when America is trying to transgender all of our children, to homosexualize our boys, lesbianize our girls? I don't think it's a coincidence. No one's going to make me believe that this just popped up out of nowhere, where black men and black women start going at each other's throats at a level we have never seen before. At the same time, the social agenda is to transgenderize our children. I think in 20 years' time, we're going to find out that the FBI and or the CIA had a hand in this.
Wow.
I wouldn't doubt that at all. You know, I'm just reflecting on a video that I saw a few weeks ago, and it was a young man and a black woman who were in some type of food establishment, and there was a 14-year-old son that was in the proximity, and there was a confrontation between the two. You probably saw it.
Yes.
And the remarkable thing about that was, here is this man who is at the height of being upset. And he says to the woman, if you say one more thing, and she could not understand that this is a time for you to embrace your femininity and walk away from your need to live in a masculine space. So she said one more thing, and then he struck her. And then the young man who's observing this, he pulls out his weapon and he shoots the man. Now, some people would think, well, the boy was justified, but we're not dealing with the why this confrontation escalated to the point that it did. And if we had a better understanding of when it's time to be a man and when it's time to be a woman, because we're confused about this. We've lifted our sisters into a place where they rely on their masculine energy, and there's a conflict between male and female as a result of this. From a psychological perspective, can you kind of break that down? What's the dynamic that results in a woman wanting to have a confrontation with a man when clearly she wasn't in her right mind and neither was he?
I tell you, one of the aspects of that dynamic that is most concerning to me is the fact that I am seeing women grow more comfortable with men attacking sisters. I am seeing women make excuses for men attacking sisters. I'm also noticing that black men no longer consider emotional discipline a part of the definition of masculinity. Since when is a lack of discipline for a man masculine? That has never been masculine. But as part of this campaign to destroy the public image of black women, many black men in this reactionary manosphere community, or as they call themselves, they refer to it as the manosphere. And these are basically black men who are fed up with black women and are no longer dating them or respecting them or marrying them at all. You have a movement called the Passport Boys, where they say we're getting our passports, we're leaving America, and we're going to find women of other countries. Now, that wouldn't be a problem if they were looking for black women in other countries, but from what I was told, they're looking for non-American women who are also not of African descent. And so for me, I'm very disappointed in black manhood in America. I'm very disappointed in black masculinity in America, because black men are no longer holding black men responsible for how we treat our women. We are in an anything goes culture right now. In fact, there was a mother who whose son, her young son, he's probably about 10 years old or so. He saw that video that you're speaking about, Bob Events, of the 14-year-old who shot the man who assaulted his woman. And to be honest with you, I have to defend the young brother in what he did. Because when someone puts their hands on your mother, you have a God-given obligation to defend her honor. And so her son saw this, and she asked her son, do you think that man was his behavior acceptable in striking the woman? And guess what her son said? The 10-year-old son said she would not be quiet. He never said he should have never hit her. He said she should have be quiet. She would not close her mouth. The point that I'm making, gentlemen, is our young boys are being influenced by the violence and disrespect that they see black men show to black women. So if we don't get a handle on this, those young black boys, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, they're going to feel even more comfortable than their uncles and fathers with disrespecting black women if we continue to allow them to see these kinds of things.
Well, the real tragedy, as I see it, is that you have three lives that basically have been wasted. You have the
Mhm.
young man who was out of his mind and struck this woman. Then you have the woman and the young man who are going to be impacted by that for the rest of their lives. We
Absolutely.
just we just have a few more minutes left, but I just have to get your take on this. And I know it may not be necessarily related to the whole idea of Africa and what we've been talking about, but it's just this idea of a system of patriarchy where we have these old white guys. I mean, I'm sure you saw what happened with Mitch McConnell the other day. And I'm sure you're aware of incidents that have happened with President Biden where it seemed as though all his marbles weren't there.
Mhm.
Everybody in the world can look at this and say, what's wrong with this picture? We got these old white people, old white men, old people who have dominated our political system all this time. What is it going to take for people to put the right people in office? And I know we've talked about voting being an exercise in futility because we keep depending on a system that hasn't served us. But when are folks going to wake up and see that this is not the way we should be going?
You know what the problem is? The world is under a delusion that the white man always knows best. They have basically ruled the planet for the past 500 years. Of course, the Chinese are now on the horizon of overtaking them, but most of the world is comfortable with white people in charge, even if they don't know what they're doing, because that has been our conditioning. I mean, think about it. God is a white man in the eyes of many black people. You see, so when you grow up with an image of Jesus as being a white man, why would you want anyone else at the helm of the nuclear age? Why would you want anyone else at the helm of economic order? Why would you want anyone else at the helm of education or warfare? Why would you want anyone but a white man after having the entire planet conditioned for half a millennium that they are the most intelligent, the most wise, and the most capable of making decisions? So until we crack open that falsification of European superiority, it's going to be difficult for a lot of us to really analyze white folks and decide exactly what their place should be in this world going forward. Remember, psychologically speaking, what the mind doesn't know, the eyes will never see. What the mind doesn't know, the eyes will never see. So if you've been conditioned to believe that white is always right, even when they make a mistake, you can't see it because what the mind doesn't believe, the eyes will never conceive.
Good point. Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna steal that one. Yeah, I think that kind of defines where we at conscionable as far as the people is concerned. And it's going back to what we said, about some of the Africans and some of the African Americans. I think it all boils down to this. Because when you said something about them, we're forgiven, we're slave, and this multiculturalism and all that, and I think the Bible can contribute to some of that, turning the other cheek and get along with everybody. The thing is, when you start talking this black stuff, it's all about being accepted. Black folks with the state of mindset that we're in right now, we just want to be accepted. When Dr. Claude said that as well, when we had their time in the '60s, when they said we was wearing dashikis and everything, what y'all want? We want to be able to go to your restaurants, your stores, and your hotels, not for independence and learning how to fish. We just want to be accepted.
Absolutely. Black people want participation. Every other racial group wants power. Chinese want power. East Indians want power. Latinos want power. Jews want power. Arabs want power. Black people want participation. We're the only group that is not interested in the accumulation of power. And that's why we're losing.
We have just a few moments left. Dr. Johnson, I want to give you another opportunity to reach out to the folks to make donations. It's on the screen so folks can see it, but those who are listening by radio can't hear it. So if you want to kick out that information quickly.
Absolutely. Donations can be made to cash.me/$FDMG school. As you see on the bottom of your screen, cash.me/$FDMG school. If you're a PayPal user, my international Africans included, that will be paypal.me/FDMG Academy. So it's FDMG Academy for PayPal, FDMG school for the Cash App. You can also make check or money order donations payable to FDMG Academy. P.O. Box 9634, Wilmington, Delaware. That's P.O. Box 9634, Wilmington, Delaware, 19809. And if you need to reach me, especially parents having issues with their children as it relates to education or mental health, my cell number is also on the bottom of your screen at 215-989-9858.
All right. Well, we'd like to thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Johnson. It's always a pleasure to connect and get an update on what's going on in the world and specifically on the continent of Africa. We'd like to thank our brother Hamtonio for making the connection and bringing you to us as he does. And we'll look forward to you visiting Cleveland sometime in the near future. Perhaps we can help you in your efforts to do what you need to do for the upliftment of not just Black boys, but the upliftment of our race. We'd also like to thank our engineer, Tone, for bringing everything together so we could have this magnificent conversation on YouTube and Facebook. And we'd like to thank you all for listening. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, do what you can to make today your absolute best day. Peace and prosperity.
Peace and prosperity.
All right, brothers, be safe.